Lineups in for the U.S. Open. Most of my tee times, well, a lot of them, I noticed, Adam, are coming up like 4 o'clock, just went off, 5 o'clock. Tee times spread throughout the day. Usually you get like a 6 a.m. Like starting tee time. I don't think we started till almost 10 a.m. today, so still a whole wave of golfers that are getting started right now.
Yeah, I kind of had the opposite. I had some pretty nice early winnings, and then now I'm just hoping that most of the field just dies in the afternoon.
It wouldn't hurt. Anyway, Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports has got a whole lot more than PGA. They've got their MLB contests and everything else. You can use the code AWESEMO when you sign up, AWESEMO, to get $30, up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points, which are as good as cash. They're the same thing as cash, except you got to use them on the site. You can play whatever contest you want so long as it's under $30. 12% management fee on the baseball contest today, 0% on a bunch of them. You just got to get in early because they fill up super quick. That's Awesemo. Use the code Awesemo for Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, sponsor of the Deeper Dive. All right, man. We've got ourselves a 9-gamer here, and DraftKings specifically is still pricing guys like DeGrom lower than they should be.
Yeah, there was writing the deep dive article today and looking at DraftKings pricing because, again, we tend to look more at the sites with two pitchers just because there's more decision points. But it's another one of those slates where, there's certainly tournament pivots you can go to, but there are just guys in each price tier that really stand out as the best above everyone else, DeGrom included at the top.
All right. Let's get into it. Toronto at Baltimore. Camden Yards, Marcus Stroman, Gabriel Inoa. Look, Stroman's a good real life pitcher. For fantasy purposes, he isn't great. His price point is reasonable today, so I guess we can factor that in. Inoa, on the other hand, isn't good, but compared to most of the pitching staff for Baltimore, he isn't bad. So, I mean, he's not David Hess, and he's not, I guess Cashner's been all right this season. Anyway, these guys are both cheap. Is at 5,400. Stroman at 7,600. They're discounted everywhere. I don't see you playing them on single pitcher sites, but Yahoo and DraftKings, maybe you're looking towards a Stroman, but you also have Flaherty at a very similar price point on DraftKings. How are you approaching pitching in this game, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it with Flaherty. I think if you either take Flaherty off the slate or you price him, $2,000 higher, then Stroman would be one of my favorite mid-range pitchers because I noticed when I was running crunches this morning that if I tightened my exposure caps on Jack Flaherty, I started to get more Stroman. Like, he was the second mid-range guy that started to pop up. But where Flaherty's, basically the same price, you're talking about the fourth highest strikeout percentage on the slate for Flaherty, combined with like an 18.5% strikeout percentage with Stroman. And there are 6 lefties in this lineup for Baltimore. Stroman has a higher strikeout percentage against righties. I think that he's likely to have a good start in terms of innings pitched, in terms of runs allowed. But I think that he just still doesn't grade out as well as Flaherty does at that same price point. So, I would say that if you're running 150 lineups or you're intentionally looking to be contrarian at that spot, then Stroman has some merit. But if you're just looking to run like a really tight pitcher pool and, you're just looking for one or two, like one pitcher in each price range, Stroman wouldn't be that guy for me.
Yeah, I agree. He's playable. It's just compared to other guys in the price range, it's kind of tough. You even get up to like a John Gray, who's not that much more expensive, and we can talk about him as well. What about bats, though? Look, neither of these guys are great. Neither are stalwarts. But Stroman has done a good job of preventing home runs, and that's one of the biggest things we look at. He's not a bad pitcher. He's just not a good fantasy pitcher.
Right. He's not a pitcher that I love taking hitters against. I do think Chance Sisco has some value at 500 on DraftKings at catcher. He is 7 on Yahoo. He is one of the Orioles' top prospects. He really struggled in his first stint at AAA. He struggled with the Orioles, but so far this year at AAA, he's been hitting much better, and he's still really cheap, hitting cleanup and catching with the platoon advantage. So I think that he's a reasonable option since you have to fill out that position. But outside of that, it's mostly Toronto bats that I'm interested in. We know it hasn't been terrible, like you said. He has only struck out about 16.5% of righties so far. He's given up a 212 ISO to righties, 167 to lefties. But you just still have underpriced power in the Toronto lineup. I think Guerrero's a top third base option. I think that depending on the pricing, what site you're playing on, Eric Sogard's a really strong play. He's $8 on Yahoo. He's 5,100 on DraftKings. I clearly prefer him on Yahoo. But he's leading off here. Kevon Biggio is where you can go as a lower owned option because he's batting seventh, but he's still cheap and has the platoon advantage. You have two left-handed power bats in Smoke and Tellez. You have right-handed power in Teoscar and Gurriel. As bad as Toronto's been this year, when they're this cheap, I still just think that there's a lot of upside because of the track record that their hitters have and the amount of power upside that they have.
Yeah, there still is upside. It's still a good park. And they're still pretty cheap. So I guess that's the trifecta. And I don't disagree with you at all. What's their total at now? I believe it's above 5. Yeah, 5.1 for Toronto against, 4.5 against Stroman. I'm with you. I'd really much prefer Toronto bats here. As far as ownership goes, what do we have? Let me pull up the stacks. If you already have it up, feel free to rattle it off where Toronto's at.
I don't have it yet.
So Toronto ownership, I know they're going to be very popular on FanDuel. I know that. On DraftKings, they are the second highest projected ownership and tops at 12%, top stack probability at 8%. Top value, though, is the highest on the slate at 12. Ownership on FanDuel's 15.8%. Whew. Yeah, top value 18.1 or values 18.1%. And then ownership on Yahoo is 14.8. So they're top two in ownership across the board, projected at least.
And so, I mean, my takeaway from looking at the top stack tool for any of the premium members that are looking at it, when you see something like that, my takeaway is that at least the popular parts of the Toronto team will probably be over-owned in tournaments. They are a really good cash team to have multiple guys from. And that's why their value rating is so high. But if you're playing them in tournaments, I think it just becomes important. It's not that you necessarily want to look at it and say, oh, Toronto is over-owned, I don't want to go there and leave it at that, because you can always go to contrarian guys in the lineup, whether you're going to like Kevon Biggio or Freddie Galvis or someone at the bottom, that you can still make those stacks contrarian. It's just that you want to have, more of an emphasis on who you're going to in that lineup, because stacking 1 through 5 is just going to put you with a ton of other teams.
For sure. All right, Washington, Arizona, Zach Greinke, Eric Fetty. Greinke's ownership is projected to be very low, but I believe there are pretty good reasons for that. He's good. He's not great. And there are guys priced similarly to him that I just like a lot more. I'll get your take on this. 7% projected ownership on DraftKings right now. It's not very high. But again, you've got other guys that are priced so similarly in better spots with better strikeout stuff. Greinke's got like the 5th lowest swinging strike rate on this slate. So it's not really encouraging. And do you know he only has 16 called strikeouts out of 82 this year?
Wow.
Explain that to me.
He's kind of like Kershaw. His strikeout percentage isn't anything you get really excited about. It's a little higher than Kershaw's, but it's not where you would expect it to be for someone that's priced up. But he does make up for it by really limiting walks. He's still a really effective pitcher. He has the fourth highest K minus BB percentage on the slate because of how low his walk percentage is. He's kind of like Stroman for me, where if I started to really cut back or get impose tight exposure caps on David Price and on Jacob deGrom, then Greinke was someone that started to pop into more lineups for me. So that basically just tells me that he's a secondary option. He's a reasonable tournament pivot if you're looking for one in that range, or if you're running 100 lineups. But he's not a priority because I have him behind a couple of other pitchers at the top, just because his strikeout percentage is lower than theirs. And the matchup against the Nats, now that Washington is almost fully healthy, is much more difficult than it used to be. And this particular lineup, you have Kurt Suzuki's a tough strikeout batting 5th. Parra's a tough strikeout hitting 6th. The whole top of the order is tough to strike out. It's not a great spot for Greinke, no matter how good he is.
I mean, would you rather have Greinke at 93 or Price at 97 against the Rangers?
Yeah, it's Price, and it's not close for me
right.
From a projection standpoint. The only argument that I make for Greinke is either one, you're playing 150 lineups and you don't want to only have exposure to 3 pitchers, or 2, you have a chalky stack of you have like a chalky Toronto stack or something, and you have money for either Greinke or Price. Then there's a reason to go to Greinke.
All right, I think that's a fair take. I'm in the same spot. If you wanted to get to a little of them, I get it. I really love David Price's spot, though. What about thank you. What about the other side of this with Fetty?
I don't really have any interest there. I still don't really buy into him being a particularly good pitcher. The strikeout numbers aren't great. Does have a higher strikeout percentage against lefties so far this year, but a small sample size, obviously. Since the start of last season, he struck out 20.4% of lefties, 18.6% of righties. It's not the best matchup either. You have some good power lefties in this lineup with Marte, Peralta, Escobar in the top five. Adam Jones has been hitting well this year. Christian Walker's got massive power. So I'm a little more interested in the Arizona bats. Walker and Peralta in particular. I think that Fetty's struggled a bit more with right-handed power than left-handed power, and that makes Christian Walker really appealing. He's batting sixth, so he probably won't be very popular, but he's actually among the league leaders in barrel per batted ball percentage. He's hitting really well this year overall, so I like him a lot. And then David Peralta is just underpriced for his skill level.
David Peralta is way too cheap, man.
Yep.
He's been way too cheap ever since he returned. I agree. It's hard to get away from that. And Nationals Park is perfectly fine. It's neutral to maybe even slightly hitter friendly, depending on where you're looking.
Yeah, I think I'm not in the area, so I don't know for sure, but I think the weather there today is actually pretty mild though.
Pretty what? Mild?
Like not great for hit. I mean, not bad for hitting, but it's not like it's 88 and humid. I don't think.
No, you're probably well. The thing is, so I was, I was just moving stuff at my dad's house before we sold it. Not to get off topic, but I'm in the Philadelphia area, and it wasn't hot, but it was humid as shit.
Yeah, yeah. So like I'm in Arizona right now, so it is hot as shit.
It's just
Here,
dry.
but yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with Washington, so I can't really speak to that.
I
But
lived out there for a couple.
from what I'm looking at, it doesn't look like it's too the weather's too.
No, I
great.
think you're right. Yeah, I lived out in Arizona for a couple of years. Yeah, 70% humidity, 94% in Boston. That's a lot of humidity. Yeah. But no, that's a good. What is the temperature in Washington? It's 74 degrees at first pitch. Not bad. So, are there any other bats here, or is it mostly the Arizona side?
It's mostly the Arizona side. Washington's a team that I never mind getting to if I'm running 150 lineups, but they're not a priority for me on this slate where you have a Coors game, you have, Eric Fetty pitching, you have the Toronto bats. There's a lot of teams that, if I had to single out a stack, I would pick ahead of Washington.
All right. What do we have in Boston? Like I mentioned, 94% humidity here at Fenway Park. It is definitely humid with David Price on the mound. I don't think that's going to stop me, though. It's really hard not to like him here. He's been very good this season. I think he's actually gone overlooked a little bit from a fantasy standpoint. He's producing solid numbers, and he faces a Rangers team that has a top 10 K rate versus lefties and bottom marks in pretty much everything. I like David Price here quite a bit. He's got a 12.5% swinging strike rate. His called plus swinging strike rate, I think, is the second highest on this entire slate. Yeah, 31.3%. He's got some good underlying numbers, some good results, and it's a good matchup.
Yeah, I think I agree with you about him maybe going a little bit overlooked, not on the slate necessarily.
No, but on the season, right?
Right. Yeah. When I went to write the article today and I looked and I was like, okay, David Price is facing Texas. I can, because I'm usually not a really big Price guy.
Neither am I.
So it was like, okay, whatever, it's Texas, I can get there. And then I started just kind of looking into his numbers and was like, wow, he's actually been really good.
Really good, I know.
Yeah, like not like, oh, he's been better than I realized. He's actually been really good.
Really good. I know, man. It's really weird. It's really.
He's tied with DeGrom for the best xFIP on the slate. He has the third highest strikeout percentage behind DeGrom and Boyd. He's 15th in PCRA among all qualified starters this year. Across the board, he's been really, really good. 29.4% strikeout percentage, 6% walk percentage. All that's really good. Texas active roster since the start of last season has a 75 WRC plus, about a 23% strikeout percentage against left-handed pitching. You have a predominantly right-handed lineup here with the exception of Chu and Odor, but Price has been good against right-handed hitters too. He has struck out 29.9% of righties. He's held them to a 290 expected WOBA, 295 actual WOBA. So I'm not concerned about that at all. And then you consider that the right-handed hitters are, the Shields, who strikes out a lot. Asdrubal Cabrera, who has very little power from the right side. Danny Santana is nothing special. Neither is Forsythe. Jeff Mathis is awful. It's not like it's a bad spot as long as Price. If Price has his good stuff, his best stuff, or anything close to it, then it's a very advantageous matchup for him.
I feel like the only time I rostered him heavily is when he went 2 innings or 2/3 of an inning and got hurt.
Oh yeah, I remember that game. I didn't have him that game,
Did he
but
get
I
hurt or
remember.
did he get tossed? Because he pitched three
He
days
got
later.
he got hurt.
Was it?
No, he had the flu.
The flu. That was it. Yeah, the flu. Okay. Because he pitched a full game 3 days later.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's been remarkable this year. He's been really good. Uh, he's not giving up home runs. He's striking out well over a batter per inning. I mean, and everything that you just mentioned, everything looks really good on price, and I think you could argue that he's underpriced. Uh, if I were pricing pitchers today, I would have him ahead of Boyd and ahead of Kershaw and behind DeGrom. Put it that way.
I would definitely have him ahead of Kershaw. Boyd's just really tough, and we'll talk about that later. Like I don't know how Boyd should actually be priced, but
All right, we'll get to it.
yeah.
We'll get to it for sure. What about bats here? Adrian Sampson has not been bad lately. He's got a near 13% swinging strike rate over his last 4 games. His xFIP's higher than his ERA, but it's only 3.5. Not a lot of ground balls, a lot of a lot of hard contact, but 3 of those last 4 starts have come at Globe Life Park. So I don't want to give him too much credit because I do think that he's been a little bit lucky, but I don't want to take everything away from him either because he's made all of these starts in very difficult conditions.
Yeah, I mean, for right now, what I'll basically give him is that I think I was wrong earlier this year when I said that he was one of the worst pitchers in baseball. I think he's better than that. I don't think he's good. I have a hard time thinking that he's made, some small change or a couple of changes and he's gone from what I think was a terrible pitcher
but
to
he might not be a gas can.
Right. I think he's a pretty mediocre pitcher, but he is facing the Red Sox in Fenway. And while I think that he's been good enough recently that, maybe it's not a perfect spot for Boston, I'm still more than happy to get to some of these Boston bats, especially because they're affordable. The bottom of the lineup is essentially free, but you still have Mookie and JD a little bit less than 5K on DraftKings. So is Devers. Bogarts is the only hitter that's 5K. So they're still a relatively affordable stack when you consider, just how good of an offense they are.
For sure. No, I agree entirely. And I'll still have some Boston, but I wouldn't have as much Boston as I would have if it came a month ago, if that makes sense.
Yeah. He's also given up more power to righties, which doesn't hurt Boston here.
Right. Yeah. Some credit to Sampson though. He has been good enough, and it hasn't been easy in easy spots. Tampa Bay and the Angels, Tyler Skaggs, Ryan Yarbrough. Ryan Yarbrough is coming off a phenomenal start against Boston. Only gave up 1 run across 7 1/3 innings with 7 Ks. And then Yanni Chirinos followed that up with 8 1-run innings too. But this is an Angels team that just doesn't give you strikeouts. On the other side, Skaggs is at a price that's hard for me to get to him against Tampa, but the Rays have the highest K rate, at least last time I looked, in the league against lefties on their active roster right now. I guess that's got to be worth some type of discussion or warrant some type of conversation here when we're getting into the Skaggs discussion.
Yeah, put Skaggs as, a secondary tournament option for me. He's someone where, not that I do it, but I know some people do. If I were narrowing down my pitcher pool before I crunched lineups, I would leave Skaggs in it. But he's not someone that I expect to be getting tons of ownership or tons of exposure to. Tampa does have strikeouts. They also have good hitters. And, Skaggs is a decent pitcher, about a 23.5% strikeout percentage against righties this year and against lefties. He's allowed a 342 WOBA to righties, expected WOBA to righties, 316 to lefties. So as we would expect, he gives up a bit more production to righties. And you have Avisail Garcia, Pham, Diaz, d'Arnaud, Adames. Not that Adames or d'Arnaud are consistently good, but they are righties with a little bit of pop at least. So you have 5 righties in the top 6. The one lefty is Brendan Lau, who's just a good hitter. So I think it's a lineup that'll strike out a lot, but it's not one where I expect Skaggs to have success a huge percentage of the time. So on some other slates, I would have more interest, but here it's just tough for me to pay more money for him than for Flaherty or for Stroman against the Orioles, or for Homer Bailey at basically the minimum.
Right. Let me ask you this: Tyler Skaggs or John Gray?
Skaggs, I think.
Okay.
I think it's close though. They're really comparable as far as not as pitchers necessarily, but just as far as how I feel about their matchup, where they're both facing teams that have a ton of strikeouts. Tampa Bay has better hitters, but they're in a bad park. San Diego has worse hitters, but they still have power and they're in cores. So I think they're really comparable in that they're high upside, relatively low probability plays.
Yeah. Uh, well, we'll get to White. There's definitely or Gray. There's definitely upside there.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of like It's not like Gray isn't volatile. He's very volatile, and you don't know what you're going to get from him, but he's good. Uh, Hitters in this game. Do you have interest? Like we talked about, Skaggs. I think both of us would agree. If Skaggs turned out a 9 strikeout game, we wouldn't be shocked.
Right.
I also wouldn't be shocked if he gave up 6 runs in 3 innings. It's one of those type of starts. So, do you have interest in Tampa Bay today?
Yeah, I think Pham really stands out to me. 4,100 on DraftKings is a really good price point for him. Obviously, El Garcia is affordable as well. And then you just get into some cheap bats. I mean, Yandy Diaz batting fourth is 4K. Travis d'Arnaud is really cheap at catcher. Willie Adames is really cheap at short. So I think that they're a stack you can get to if you were looking to go like the Grom plus price. I think you could get to like a Tampa stack.
Okay. And on the other side, I'm assuming you don't have a lot against Yarbrough, or do you?
No, I mean, outside of Mike Trout, obviously.
Yeah, well, of course. Yeah, Trout's always going to be in play. Uh, is Trout a priority for you though, being at the same as Coors prices?
Right. I mean, outfield's deep is the other thing. And Trout, the thing about Trout is he's the best hitter in baseball. He's not the best power hitter in baseball.
Right.
And so in DFS, I'm all for getting to Trout when you can, but there's a lot of times where he's not as much of a priority if there are a lot of outfielders that have better hitting conditions or have more power. Yeah, I think that he's one of the top outfield plays, but I do think it's a really crowded spot.
That's how I feel about him too. I mean, if I'm not ending up on a lot of Trout, I know why. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Anything else on this one? I think that's a pretty short game to sum up.
Yeah, I think so too.
New York Mets, St. Louis Cardinals. Jacob deGrom is just at a price where it's hard to ignore him, much like Verlander was yesterday, much like deGrom was last start, and much like Chris Sale was 3 days ago. There are certain guys that jump off the page at you for good reason, whether it's matchup, price point, park, or all three. Jacob deGrom has all three, and yes, this is not a bad Cardinals team at all, but they are running out how many righties in this lineup?
6 plus the pitcher.
6, right? Yeah, 6 right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, including Flaherty. Did you say plus the pitcher?
Yeah,
I didn't hear the last part. Yeah, so in total 7. Carpenter batting 1, Colton Wong batting 7th, and Jacob deGrom's prices come up, but not significantly enough, man. Like not to the point where you look at him and you say, I'll go elsewhere. I'll pivot down. Like if you wanted to pivot, I guess I get that, but I don't even know if it's necessary. I still believe that Jacob deGrom is as good as he was last year. I have no concerns. He's 10-2 on FanDuel. He's 10-4 on DraftKings. And on Yahoo, deGrom is the most expensive pitcher at 53, but it's not egregiously expensive. He's the same price as Matt Boyd. Where are you landing on deGrom?
right. So I don't think it's like a laughable spot like it was when he was 96
No,
or
of
whatever
course
against
not.
the Rockies. But it's a better Cardinals team. It is a more expensive price tag on the Grom, but I still think he's a really good play, and I'm sure I'll be getting to a good amount of him. The Cardinals have good fastball hitters. They're certainly a team that can get to deGrom if he's not locating well, if he doesn't have his best stuff. But they do have 7 righties in this lineup. He has struck out 33.5% of righties this season compared to 24.6% of lefties. He's held righties to a 247 expected WOBA compared to a 315 expected WOBA for lefties. So
17.5% swinging strike rate against righties too, with a 247 x WOBA.
Yeah, exactly. So while his numbers this year have been really good anyway in the aggregate, if you actually like strip them out and look at how he does against righties versus lefties, you're getting the good side of the platoon advantage here for deGrom, no question. And so I do think that it's just a really good play. I mean, he has got the second highest strikeout percentage on the slate behind Boyd. He has the second best called or 2 strike percentage in baseball behind Chris Paddock. So he's working in 2 strike counts like 37% of his pitches. And not only does that obviously give him strikeout upside, but it also reduces the quality of the contact that the Cardinals are making. So when they do hit the ball, you're getting more weak contact, you're getting easier outs. So that's a stat that correlates well with future ERA. So I think that deGrom is really clearly a top play.
Yes, so do I. He's got a 2.66 xFIP against righties this year, and he's going to face 7 of them, one of them whom's a pitcher tonight. A .91 whip. Yeah, I don't have many complaints. He has a 1.55 whip against lefties. That's been a lot of his struggles this year, has just been putting left-handed hitters on base. He's walking them at 10% compared to 3.8% walks for righties.
Right. Yeah, both pitchers in this game, if you actually just look at their splits, like their numbers against righties, it's just night and day against lefties.
Oh my God, yeah. If Flaherty was facing all right-handed teams, he'd probably be 11K today.
Right.
Lefties have torched him, and he's been great against. Well, I mentioned this on the strategy show with Jake today. He throws a slider 40% of the time to righties. Like, what do you expect from him? You know, he throws a ton of sliders to righties. So
yeah, and it's a really good one.
It's an incredible one, and his changeup is just okay. So, and does he even throw the changeup a lot? I think like 5%.
He's been fastball, curveball.
What's that?
Fastball, curveball, slider to lefties this year.
I thought he threw like 5% changeup when I looked.
I might have it just so that I'm not looking at anything below 10%. Yeah, 4% changeups.
Yeah, so he doesn't really have a changeup anyway. The Mets lineup is kind of loaded. I don't want to say loaded up top, but McNeil, Conforto, lefty to start him off. Pete Alonso is not a lefty, but he's damn good. Then Dominic Smith. So you got lefty, really good righty, lefty. Then you have righty, pitcher. It is a very exploitable spot for Flaherty against a middling Mets team, but he's also going to be very popular and for obvious reasons.
Yeah, the makeup of the Mets lineup, it feels like one of those games where, like, if you fade Flaherty, the game starts out with like 2 home runs in the first 3 or 4 batters.
You feel great about it.
And you feel great about it, and then you look at the scores in the 3rd inning, and he has 16 points. And
it was that way against the Cubs the other day.
Solo home run out, strikeout.
That's what it was against the Cubs.
Right. So I love Flaherty here. The fact that there are 6 righties in this, or 5 righties plus DeGrom in this lineup, is appealing for him. Dominic Smith isn't a great hitter. If Flaherty makes mistakes, Smith take advantage, but he's not someone that is gonna or is likely to hit Flaherty if Flaherty is actually doing what he should. Conforto is the scariest bat here. Alonso, obviously, like you said, is really good from the right side, but the price tag on Flaherty just takes any risk out for me.
Yeah, it does. He's way too inexpensive, for what he has. When you just factor in like his K rate, swinging strike stuff, it's all top 5 or so on this slate, and he's not priced anywhere near that. So it's hard not to like him. What about on FanDuel? He's 79 on FanDuel. Obviously on DraftKings, 2 pitcher sites, very easy decision to make. $40 on Yahoo, a little bit more compared to what it is on DraftKings, but it's not crazy. John Grace also 34 on Yahoo, which I think is actually pretty enticing. What about on FanDuel?
Yeah, I think on FanDuel it's a little more of a decision because obviously you're only rostering 1 pitcher, and also he's $400 more than Gray, who has plenty of upside in his own right. I still really like Flaherty there. I think that, if for some reason if I'm looking to pay up for 2 stacks, Flaherty still gives you a lot of upside there. He still has the 4th highest strikeout percentage on the slate. He's still struck out 31.5% of righties this year. But in terms of how I would prioritize guys by site, he's the best player. DraftKings is the best site to play him on, then Yahoo, then FanDuel.
Okay, I would agree with that. What about any bats from this game? I mean, we do know that Flaherty does struggle against lefties, so I'd be remiss to not mention, some of the numbers against lefties this year. Pretty ugly. 2.2 home runs per 9, 236 ISO. He's been beat up pretty bad. 504 xFIP against lefties. Do you have any interest in the top of the Mets order just for leverage against a very popular pitcher?
Yeah, Michael Conforto in particular. He's just a really good hitter anyway. He has the platoon advantage here. Flaherty struggles with lefties, like you said. All that stuff working in his favor. Batting second, reasonable price tag. So if I were singling out one guy from the Mets, I would go there. But if you're looking to leverage mini stack or leverage stack, I think, any grouping of the top 4 plus, one other guy works out really well.
All right. I think we can move on. 2 top pitchers on the slate, and then some lefties on the side of this New York Mets. All right, you had alluded to having some confusion as it relates to Matt Boyd. We get to this game now. Detroit, Kansas City, Homer Bailey, we'll get to him momentarily. Talking about decent value. I thought he pitched yesterday, Adam.
He had a ton of upside yesterday.
0.00 upside.
Yeah.
But Matt Boyd first. He is the most expensive pitcher on this slate on DraftKings, the most expensive pitcher on this slate on FanDuel, the most expensive pitcher on this slate, tied with Jacob deGrom on Yahoo. Matt Boyd's been very good. Does he deserve top honors on this slate in terms of salary?
And so this is why I think that it's confusing. Like, you asked me what his price should be. I don't really know the answer because he's been this season. He has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate. He has the best K-minus BB percentage. He has the best PCRA on the slate. He's got the best walk percentage, I think, on the slate. If not, it's really close. I know it's better than deGrom at 4.4%. So he's got all this stuff, working in his favor this year. The reason that I don't know what to do with him is because you have the track record with deGrom. You have a track record with Kershaw of them being, ace level pitchers. You have Matt Boyd doing this we're going on like a full season now, but nowhere near the track record. So I don't think he should be more expensive than deGrom specifically. But also if you were just looking at this year's numbers, he should be. It's not like it's a bad matchup. So I think that basically what that leads to is it's not a tournament play that I think, you have to make. Like, if someone decides that they don't want to take a stand on Matthew Boyd, I'm not going to think that they're wrong. I don't know. I kind of doubt that I'm doing that. But I think it's a very reasonable one that you could make if you're looking for a spot, especially if you're someone who plays, 5 to 10 lineups in these larger field tournaments and you're looking for a spot to take a stand. You're most likely going to get the best pitcher on the slate this season at lower ownership than the other guys at the top because he's more expensive than them and because projection systems are going to prefer them, as they should, because they're weighting in previous year's data. So I think that he's a good tournament play. I don't think that it's one you necessarily have to make, but it's certainly a viable one if you're looking to be contrarian at the top.
I'm gonna go a little out of order here. What are your thoughts about these Kansas City bats who are very, very, very cheap?
I'm not really that interested. Like, Merrifield and Mondesi are both, I think, pretty good plays. Soler has some power, but I just have a ton of respect for Boyd.
He's really good.
Yeah. I just think Boyd's really good. And because I don't think he gets a lot of ownership, I'm less inclined to go to like Kansas City than I am to go to the Mets.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I do think Homer Bailey's very much in play, as much as it pains me to say so. It's the highest K strikeout team active roster-wise against right-handers this year. They rank bottom 2 in WOBA, ISO, WRC plus against righties. So not only do they lack ample power against righties, but they miss a ton of balls. They strike out a lot. They walk at one of the lowest clips in the league. I mean, if there ever was a decent spot for Bailey to produce good numbers and get good swings and misses on that solid splitter of his, this would be the day.
Yeah, I think that the walk percentage you mentioned is really important because, Bailey's got a mediocre strikeout percentage at 20.5%, but his walk percentage is higher than you would like for a pitcher with his strikeout stuff. He's at almost 10%, but the Tigers have the second highest strikeout percentage against righties this year, their active roster, and the second lowest walk percentage. So both of those things work in his favor. And then also one stat that I do think is interesting on him is that he's tied with David Price for the 9th best 2-strike percentage among starters that have thrown 750 pitches or more this season. 34% of the pitches Homer Bailey has thrown this season have been with 2 strikes on the batter. And that is a big reason, or I believe it's a big reason, why only 4.8% of balls in play against Bailey have barreled, which is a really low number. And it, obviously helps keep the damage down when hitters ball in play. I think that at his price tag, like, I would have interest in pretty much anyone anyway, but just the fact that there are some numbers that point to him having sustained success makes it even easier for me to be interested.
Okay. Yeah, look, a lot of the underlying numbers on Bailey really aren't that bad. I guess it's just whether or not he implodes. And I think he's very capable of going out having a strong game. If you're going to do it, it's going to be against this Tigers team. How much interest do you have in Bailey?
He's, to me, the clear-cut value pitcher on this slate. So I expect that I'll get a pretty good amount because I compare him with DeGrom, I compare him with Boyd, I compare him with whoever I want, and still get good hitting.
Okay.
And I think he's just like an average pitcher,
He is.
and
Yeah.
he's priced like he's a total gas can, and he's facing a team that gives him a ton of upside.
All right. Anything else in this game you want to talk about?
If you're not going to Bailey, so I think that the Tigers are most interesting on DraftKings or Yahoo, since Bailey will have the most ownership on those two sites. But even excluding that, I think that Kristen Stewart and Nick Castellanos are both good plays. They're just both really inexpensive. They both have a lot of power, and Bailey, like I said, he's not a good pitcher. He's not a bad pitcher. He's kind of just there. And I think that those two guys in particular are too good for their price points.
Okay. I was looking to see what percent of first pitch fastballs is Bailey throwing, just to see if he's getting ahead in counts by fooling batters. This can't be right though. Can't be right. It says 10.8%. I don't think.
10.8% first pitch fastballs.
Yeah.
What'd you look on, Savant?
Yeah.
Did you use the pitch parameters thing?
Which ones?
Like, so that it wasn't just taking all of his pitches?
Oh yeah. I don't know. Maybe I have something else. I just did it on the fly right now. We could look it up some other time. Sounds low though. I had an 0-2 count or an 0-0 count. Whatever. We don't have a lot of time to go over it anyway. But is there anything else? Any hitters outside of maybe Mondesi and Merrifield?
No, Merrifield, Mondesi, Soler, and then Castellanos.
All right. White
Oh,
Sox.
Martin Maldonado is 2K flat. He's a
Yeah, he's
catcher.
the. I
Whatever.
know. I noticed that on this morning's show as well. And on a normal slate, he'd get scooped up, and you'd see him played in a lot of lineups because he's batting seventh too. But if Austin Hedges ends up being in the lineup, that'll probably is that out yet? I don't think it is. No, that'll probably if Hedges is in there, you're going to see his ownership really high because he's not even that much more expensive.
Yeah, he's 2,900 on DraftKings.
Yeah, Yankees and White Sox. J.A. Happ, Ivan Nova. Really strong pitching matchup here, but Happ has been better. Happ has looked a lot better lately. I still don't think he's a very good strikeout pitcher because he never was. Outside of like 1 year, he's a good pitcher, but he's not special. I don't see myself paying this much for him, even against the White Sox. Are you going to any J.A. Happ?
Probably not really going to get there on this slate. He's someone that I would get to more if like Flaherty weren't so underpriced. But I just don't think he offers the same type of strikeout upside that David Price does for more, or that Flaherty does for less. It's not like it's a great White Sox lineup, but it's not the worst either. I'd rather get to like Eloy Jimenez. I'd rather get to some James McCann at catcher, Jose Abreu at first base. Anderson's cheap again. There's some right-handed power here that you could one off against Happ that I think is actually interesting.
Okay, but less stacks, more so one or two.
Yeah, I kind of doubt that I get to a lot of full stacks. I expect that I have a lot of, like them being my two man in a 5-2.
All right. Well, I guess we got to talk about Ivan Nova because he's almost the minimum, but he's up against the Yankees team with a 5.5 implied run total at guaranteed rate field. Which side of this one do you like?
The Yankees. If Bailey
It's
weren't on
weird.
the slate, or if he were like $1,000 more expensive, I would probably end up getting some Nova just because of his price tag and because I'll roster almost anyone at that price tag. But with Bailey being 5,200 and him projecting much better than Nova for me, I expect that I'll just be getting to the Yankees. I prefer the lefties. D. Gregorius, I think, is a really good play. Aaron Hicks is a good play. But then, obviously the right-handed power in the middle with Voit, Sanchez, Gleyber Torres, they are just good hitters. So, Yankees are a good stack. If I were singling out hitters, I would look to the left-handed power.
Okay. If you're looking throughout this lineup and you've got LeMahieu, Hicks, Voit, Sanchez, Gregorius, Torres, Gardner, Frazier, Tachman. I know you just talked about left-handed power, but is there anyone you really like in this lineup? Like even as a one-off, a two-off, outside of just a flat stack?
Yeah, Hicks would probably be my favorite. Sanchez, because of the position, and then also Didi.
Yeah, Didi batting fifth. Are you willing to get down to a Gardner or Tachman at 7 and 9?
More so, I expect that any exposure I get to Talkman or Gardner would probably be in Yankee stacks.
Yeah, I can't imagine you'd have them as one-offs. No, I agree with that. Um,
Like I would rather, if I were taking one of those bottom of the order guys, I'd rather get Clint Frazier just because he's the best power hitter out of the group.
yeah, for sure. Batting eighth, but still has ample pop. I guess that's it for this game. It's not a whole lot to talk about. Colorado, San Diego. There is a decent amount to talk about here. Matt Strom coming off the injured list and John Gray. I want to start with Gray. He is a good pitcher. Gray is in a difficult spot, but I also wouldn't be that surprised to see him produce good numbers today. 12% swinging strikes, 30% called plus swinging strikes for Gray. That ranks when you're looking at this slate as a whole. Gray has what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 best swinging strike rate behind DeGrom, Boyd, Price, Flaherty, and Kershaw. Called plus swinging strike rate for Gray on this slate is behind Boyd, Price, Flaherty. It's the fourth highest. No, I'm sorry. It's tied with Flaherty, so it's the third best on the slate, ahead of Greinke, Strom, DeGrom, Kershaw. We know that he has good stuff. Like, that's not something I've ever been concerned about. He's striking out 29% of right-handed hitters. He is good. He has a 302 xFIP against them, and the Padres have the highest K rate in the league against right-handed pitching. So it's kind of a rock and a hard place type deal here, Adam, because you've got a really shitty park and warm temperatures at Coors and a good pitcher in a very good matchup that would be a lock spot anywhere outside of Coors.
Right. So I think that in tournament, like he's purely a tournament play here. But you mentioned the strikeout percentage against righties. I think that's really important with how many righties are expected to be in the lineup for the Padres. They do have some options. I mean, they could go with like Austin Allen. They could go with Greg Garcia. So we'll have to see how that lineup actually shakes out. I think it's the only one that we don't have yet. But if they do go with like 7 righties here, I think Gray has a ton of upside. If they go with like 5 righties, then I would dial it back a little bit, but it would still be an okay spot. He has struck out 25.5% of righties at home this year. So while the strikeout percentage does drop off a bit, it's not like he becomes Kyle Freeland or something. So I have interest in Gray. I just don't know how much I'll get to because again, he's $1,000 more than Jack Flaherty.
Right. That's what makes it difficult. But I still think Gray is a very interesting option here, only because he's got a very good slider that will play nicely at Coors, and I wouldn't be surprised to see the Padres strike out 10 times because they're the San Diego Padres. And Gray's got look at these strikeout totals over his last, because he will allow some runs at times. Listen to these strikeout totals over his last 6 though. 9 strikeouts, 8, 8, 7, 2. That was against Arizona. 7, 8. So he's got 7+ in 5 of his last 6. He's got 8+, I think, in 3 of them. Like, if there's one good thing about Gray is he does have a pretty high ceiling when he's cruising.
Agreed.
All right, well, we got Strom on the other side of this. Good young pitcher, but he's probably in for some trouble today. I'm assuming you don't have any Matt Strom interest, so I will ask you about hitters here.
Yeah, no real interest in Strom. Colorado, of course, is always one of the best stacks when they're in Colorado. Story and Arenado, the two that really stand out because they're the 2 best right-handed hitters in this lineup. They are running a lot of lefties out there, so it's kind of an ugly one to stack. But I think that also probably keeps their ownership down a little bit more than it would. I think we saw it either yesterday or the day before where they were facing a lefty in Coors and they just really weren't owned because people don't want to pay up for lefty, which makes sense, but you're still talking about the Rockies in Coors Field, and that gives you a ton of upside. So I expect that full stacking and including like Blackman with Story, Dahl, Arenado will be pretty contrarian because you have to sacrifice a pitcher, and I think that most people will say, okay, I can save some money in the outfield, get better pitching, and then just have Arenado and Story.
Right. Man, they're expensive though. They're really expensive. I guess Homer Bailey makes that a little easier.
Yes, he does. Bailey, Flaherty, you can do whatever you want.
San Diego hitters?
Yeah, they're cheap, and I think it's an interesting tournament spot anyway because we know how good Gray is. San Diego doesn't have a really high implied run total, especially when you consider that they're playing in Coors. But, Manny Machado is still cheap. Hosmer's cheap. Reyes has a ton of power. Myers is reasonably
free.
priced. Yeah, you mentioned Hedges' price tag if he's in the lineup. Fernando Tatis is a really interesting tournament play. I think if you're stacking the Padres, Tatis is one way that you can be contrarian because he's like the only guy on this team that's really, really expensive. You're almost paying the same price for Tatis as you are for Trevor Story. And so I imagine people will go to Story or go somewhere else to pay down a position. I think that it'll be popular to have. I think most Padres stacks will be like the middle of the order plus like Hedges plus Kinsler or Myers or something, so that you can get exposure to cores and you still get good pitching. If you include Tatis in there and drop down at a pitcher or something, I think it makes you contrarian.
As Alex would say, pay up to be contrarian.
Yeah, exactly.
What about Renfroe, though? He's also very expensive.
He's not in the projected lineup I was looking at, but if he's in there, then yeah, I like him too.
Okay. Makes sense. I know he wasn't in the lineup yesterday, right?
Yeah, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, their lineup's kind of been all over the place, but
dude, it's impossible to predict right now. Absolutely.
Yeah, but you can't even fault them because for the most part, they're all pretty good hitters that should be getting playing time.
Sure. All right, favorite bats from this game overall?
Story, Arenado.
Okay. We got one more to go here. Hey, by the way, Deeper Dive is the promo code to get 50% off your first month at awesemo.com. Deeper Dive, one word, Deeper Dive. You get the ownership projections, the player projections, the top stack tool. Player projections and ownership projections for all sports, by the way. The Fantasy Cruncher add-on is available. The lineup builder, the deep dive article from Adam and myself, Josh's article. There's a lot. There's a lot on there. And we only got 10 minutes left. So take my word for it. Check it out. Say what's up in the Slack chat when you do. We got a premium Slack chat for all of our subs. It's Deeper Dive. One word, Deeper Dive. Use that when you sign up. Get 50% off your first month. Get all the same tools that Alex uses, that Awesemo uses to seemingly win 100 grand every night. So it's true. Dodgers and Chicago, Kershaw, Lester. I am curious to get your take on Kershaw. I don't see myself getting there today. There's Price, there's DeGrom, maybe even Boyd. Kershaw has kind of reinvented himself in the sense that he's still doing a great job of keeping runs off the board for the most part. But the strikeout stuff is not what it used to be. And quite frankly, I don't know if he's a 10K pitcher anymore against a team like the Cubs.
Yeah, the presence of Price and DeGrom really makes it tough because they both, to me, are better plays. And then also looking right now at our projected ownership that was updated 9 minutes ago, we have, on DraftKings, you have DeGrom, Flaherty, Price, and then Kershaw in terms of ownership. If Kershaw were going to be lower owned, then I could see getting there some. But if I'm going to go to one of those pitchers that, one of those top tier pitchers that isn't DeGrom or Price, I think I'd kind of rather get to Boyd. I do like Kershaw. The Cubs' active roster has the 9th highest strikeout percentage on the slate. Since last season against right-handed pitching, they're pretty average in terms of production. Kershaw's been good, all that. But I just think that, you're talking about almost an 8 percentage point difference between Boyd's strikeout percentage and Kershaw's with a almost identical walk percentage. And you're going to get a little bit lower ownership on Boyd, and he's not that much more expensive. So I think I would rather get to Boyd than Kershaw.
Okay. Yeah, and that's what I said. Maybe Boyd even over Kershaw. Definitely DeGrom and Price over Kershaw. You had said the same thing. But
Yep.
maybe even Boyd is what you're saying.
Right.
Definitely Boyd?
Yeah, I mean, probably.
Definitely
Boyd.
maybe?
Yeah, definitely. Probably definitely maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what I did this morning before I wrote the deep dive was I ran just a set of lineups with every player capped at 60%. And then I cut I ran it with my pitchers capped at 60% and my hitters at 30. And then I cut it to where all my pitchers were 30% just to try and see how guys were getting into my lineups. And I didn't really get much Kershaw when the pitchers were all at 60. And then when I cut them to 30, he got up between like 20 and 30%. And I actually got more Kershaw than Boyd. But I think that I'll probably end up adjusting a little bit so that they end up comparable or Boyd comes in ahead of Kershaw.
So there's a 40% chance you're definitely playing Boyd over Kershaw.
Exactly.
Got you. John Lester. I was talking to Jake today about how I don't buy into lefties being better at holding runners. And John Lester and Cole Hamels over the years had really demonstrated that nicely for us. I'll tell you what, man, over the past few years, though, Lester has done a very good job of limiting what used to be. You know, he allowed 44 stolen bases one year.
I mean, he used to be incapable of throwing the ball to first base. Do you remember that?
Oh, dude, his pickoff move was so bad.
Anthony Rizzo was like a hockey goalie. He would just stand at first base, like ready to dive in any direction.
There was actually one where the ball got stuck in Lester's glove and he threw the whole glove to first base. Do you not remember that against the Pirates?
That wasn't a pickoff, though. That was like a ground ball.
Yeah, but I don't care. It was fun.
Yeah, yeah.
But yes, correct. It was. I'm saying Lester gets himself into some odd shit.
Oh, yeah. Now, I remember one of his pickoff throws. Like, I remember him throwing it, and Rizzo just, like, looking up.
Yeah,
and
not even trying for it.
Right.
That's when you know it's bad, when there's no jump or dive or nothing.
Right.
It's like,
yeah,
what are you going to do? But he's on track to allow like 12 stolen bases this year, which is maybe better than league average.
Yeah, he's gotten it together for sure. So is Hamels to some extent.
Hamels to a large extent. I wonder what it is.
I think Boyd, and this is just going from memory, Boyd, I think, used to struggle with that. He's gotten better too.
Was it Boyd or Norris?
Both of them, I think.
Yeah.
But
I used to get them mixed up when they both weren't good.
I confused them. I still do.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when you would see him on a slate, tell me you wouldn't be like, wait, is it him? Or is it because there was no distinguishable features in their game. They both weren't good. They both didn't get strikeouts.
And they were both guys that I had I thought could be better going forward. So they were the exact same to me.
Right. They weren't terrible, but they weren't great.
Right.
Now it's pretty easy to distinguish between the two. You don't like Lester on most nights. I doubt you like him against the Dodgers.
No, way more interested in the Dodgers because they are affordable.
Yeah, talk to me about the Dodger bats. Whenever they're facing lefties, you get so many cheap righties.
Yep, and David Freese probably gets pinch hit for, but outside of that, they're not going to pinch hit for TK. They're probably not going to pinch hit for Chris Taylor. They're both really, really cheap. But the thing that I really like about the Dodgers is that their lefties hit left-handed pitching well. Granted, Lester is good against lefties, but it's not like, Cody Bellinger's a dead spot in the lineup. It's not like Max Muncy's a dead spot in the lineup. Even Verdugo, in a limited sample at least, has shown the ability to have some success. So you can stack the Dodgers however you want, and you're getting good hitters that can handle the opposing pitcher. So the Dodgers are a team that I really like a lot here because I think that they're just way too good of an offense to be able that you shouldn't be able to stack one of the best offenses in baseball and then also roster whatever pitching and one-offs you want.
Yeah, no, you absolutely shouldn't. Lester's not a bad pitcher. Like I know you really don't like this. I have respect for Lester just in that he's not terrible.
He's improved this year.
He is improved. Yeah, he has. Now, what's funny is over his last few starts, he's looked really bad. Philly dropped 7 on him, 4 earned. Then Houston dropped 7 on him. Then the Angels he was great against. And then St. Louis dropped 4 on him. But those are 4 tough matchups. Like, I'm willing to give him some bit of a pass. Oh, and Washington right before that dropped 5. So, I mean, there have been some ugly starts for Lester. The biggest thing here, though, is just Dodger pricing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that almost every hitter in the lineup for the Dodgers is better at hitting than John Lester is at pitching.
Yeah.
And they're affordable. And again, we talk about it. You're not trying to get like the highest probability team in tournaments or the highest projected team. You're trying to get a team that can really catch lightning in a bottle and has the overall talent to do so.
And that you can fit into a lineup with each other.
What'd you say?
And that you can fit into a lineup with each other in different variations.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you get a team like the Dodgers at this price point, you're getting a team that if they're the highest scoring team on the slate any night of the season, it's not really surprising. You don't go, oh, wow, where'd that come from?
Yep.
But then you're also getting the pitching where it's like, okay, he can be the top scorer.
Yeah, exactly. I do think you may give David Freese a little too much credit. I think Lester might be a better pitcher than Freese as a hitter, but I don't care because Freese is batting 3rd. Like I don't care. He's in a great spot. He's got the platoon advantage, and he's discounted. Jay Kelly has a question for us. We do have a minute here as that we just finished up our last game. Unless you have any Chicago bats you like against Kershaw.
No, I'm good.
So
wait, go ahead. And Chris Bryant's really, really cheap. I just noticed that, but okay, now I'm good.
Okay. He says, Laffy, ship my money. How much weight do you put into bullpens when you stack teams versus starter, i.e. Lester and the Cubs bullpen?
Not much. So, uh, not okay. So not much because it's factored into Vegas. Like it's baked into lines. It's why you see even when Max Scherzer pitches that the opposing team has like a 3.5 implied run total. It's because they're going to score 4 runs in the last 2 innings. Um, but one thing that I do try and pay attention to is if a bullpen is particularly shot, where they really don't have an answer that you expect to be effective that day, then I think that, it's still baked into Vegas, but it does at least give you a little bit higher probability of getting to that dealing outcome. But in general, I don't worry about bullpen too much. Like it's a data point, but I think that it's pretty accurately baked into Vegas.
But I think there's also something that might be even bigger than that. And I obviously agree with everything you're saying. But if the starter gets blown up in the first couple of innings, you're not bringing in your best relievers.
Right.
Like you're going to bring in a guy that can get you through the final 6 or 7 frames and hopefully do it without the damage getting much worse. Maybe plug the gap or the holes in the ship. But I mean, how many times have you seen guys come out of the bullpen that it's like, oh, he's pitched once this year and he's going to come in and mop up what's already a lost game?
Right, but no team really has a good mop up guy.
What are you saying? That's my point.
Right. So I'm saying it's not like the Cubs have a worse mop up guy than the Dodgers or something. Like if they score 12 runs off Lester in the first 2 innings, they're gonna get an advantageous matchup no matter what bullpen they were
No,
facing.
that's what I'm saying. That's why.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we're agreeing, I think.
Yes, that's why I'm saying I'm not as worried about a strong opposing bullpen. If he gets knocked out of there early, you're not getting their strongest guys. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Where it matters is like in those 5-3 games.
Exactly.
The starter comes out in the sixth, and you just don't score any more runs.
Right.
But that is very clearly in the lines. Like if you have a bullpen like that, the run total is going to be lower because you're not likely to score after the 6th inning.
100%. And the days where teams just explode, it's not a big deal at all. All right.
Right.
And yes, Ron, we are both not wearing hats today. That's because I get my hair cut once a month. And I told her today, the girl that cuts my hair, I was like, I'm going to wear a hat for the next 29 days. And then I'll get my hair cut. And then that day I won't wear a hat. And then I'll wear a hat again for 29 days. Like, I don't know why I pay to get my hair cut, but I do.
Yeah. For me, it's because I'm visiting my grandparents after lock. And every time I wear a hat, my grandmother comments on me wearing a hat. So I figured for the first day I see her, I would appease her.
Is that what you're out there for?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
My grandparents, uncle, cousins live out here.
Where are you at?
Half hour from Phoenix.
Oh, okay. I lived in Phoenix.
Family?
I was in Phoenix.
Yeah.
I'll tell you after the show. As always, we appreciate you guys hanging out. Good luck tonight. Before you leave, if you like the show, you want to see more, you appreciate it. We appreciate you. Hit us with a thumbs up, like the video. It helps us out a lot, and it does more for us than you know. Subscribe, hit that notification bell as well, so you always know when content is going to drop next. Until next time, Adam and I will close out the week with you tomorrow on the Deeper Dive and take you into the weekend. Live Before Lock coming up next. Peace.